Awakening is therapy. I've noticed therapy and awakening appear to be near identical to each other. So let's first define what I mean by therapy. Uh, there is I believe it was Abraham Maslow who came up with this definition of therapy, which is therapy is simply preparing the client or helping facilitate the client to be able to face the truth. And awakening here is being defined as merging with the truth, becoming conscious of the truth. And so therapy simply is the process upon which you are facing the truth. And that, for me, is directly identical to the process of awakening. Let me give some more relatable examples and more down-to-earth examples, and then I will give you some more existential examples. And I want to note that there is very likely going to be a communication barrier here. So if I say something that's like, oh, that's kind of weird, or oh, wow, that's insane, or this guy is a complete nut, just notice those judgments there and simply chalk it up to a discrepancy in communication. So I just want to put that forewarning there. So what I've noticed in my personal healing journey or therapy journey, just for personal life and also in helping facilitate others with their journeys, is you'll notice certain things like awakening to or facing the truth of those who have hurt you. Those who have hurt you ultimately have hurt you out of some sort of fundamental feeling of separation, some sort of ignorance. And to actually realize that and really fully cognize that, like, oh, if he knew or if she knew the hurt that they created, then they wouldn't have done it. Therefore, right, they just didn't know of the evils that they do. It goes to that biblical quote. It's like, forgive them, Father, for they not know what they do. And yeah, and a lot of healing with our relationships is realizing that so much of what we call evil is something that we have actually unconsciously manufactured in our mind out of an attempt to make sense of reality, when the truth is we didn't have the full picture. And this can be a very difficult process to face. Sometimes we'll need some very serious tools to help us face these difficult truths. Because otherwise our self-deception and our biases will get in the way. We need to really focus our consciousness and to be able to look in the eye of the truth on things that have hurt us. So, that's with how, therapy, right, is awakening to, like, oh, everyone comes from good intentions. And good being relative to what is good to the individual delivering those good intentions. And unfortunately, and fortunately, you could say, because the mind is infinite, because reality is infinite, there is an infinite amount of ways upon which an individual can bias themselves and twist their minds into delivering what they call goodness, which could be actually evil. So you take any evil figure in history, they actually had some sort of rationalization or some sort of sense making to make sense to themselves that they were a good person. A lot of times that is the case. And I'll just pause on that, not to get so deep into the weeds on that. A lot of healing about evil doings upon to us is recognizing, oh, I really don't have control, and I never had control. And that's like an awakening to that. It's like, wow, I never really had control. It wasn't really my choice. Given that I grew up with this life and in this part of the world, and with, picked up these addictions because I was influenced by these people and this culture that normalized these addictions, or whatever it is. It's a realization. And in that realization, then you can really forgive yourself. When we can't forgive ourselves, it's because we haven't really truly understood why. Forgiveness comes from pure understanding. When we can really understand what is going on, why someone has done something or why we have done something, that is when true forgiveness can occur. That is when we can really detach emotionally, or at least quiet down those emotions. So much of therapy is, for example, with any somatic therapy. So, with trauma, we can have an oversensitized reaction from our brain relative to a stimulus. So, to put this in, for an example, is someone who's afraid of animals, even like just dogs and cats. Someone can just be unbelievably scared for it, and it's just like a little tiny lapdog that wouldn't hurt, that wouldn't hurt anyone. And for that person, what they literally need to do is they need to use a somatic technique or a technique of some sort to retrain their nervous system, retrain their brain, retrain their nervous system to align with the truth of reality that, hey, this is safe. It's okay. And that is making your nervous system, your body, awaken to the truth. And in this case, it's the truth of the safety of a simple, lapdog. Or for me, for a personal example, was awakening to the safety of, let's say, bugs, bees, and hornets and stuff like that. Like, in practice, I'm not going to die from any of these creatures, especially where I live in southern Alberta, Canada, where or just in Canada in general, you know, it's not like Australia, for example, you know, where there's a lot more to worry about. But even then in Australia, there's still a level of let's say, healthy attunement, to fears and certain things like that. Like, there's healthy fear, let's say, to a bear, for example. But a lot of times too, there can be an unhealthy amount of fear to a bear. And oftentimes our inability to understand, to merge with the truth of how these animals operate can either be the difference between being in big trouble or not. I remember, like, for example, like with the black bear, right? You'd want to stand your ground, whereas like with a grizzly, you would not want to do that. You'd want to crawl up in a ball and cover your neck, and yeah. Anyways, side tangent. Another example of therapy is like, sometimes we will have resentment around things that happened in our childhood, or the ways we were treated, or the ways that, like, maybe you were treated in the school system, or maybe a bully, that you've had, or many bullies you've had them all throughout the years. And I've noticed that as I've become more aware of like, why was I picked specifically to be bullied so much, that's when I actually got healed more. For me, I was an easy mark, right? I was visibly the shortest kid, and I was also socially awkward, and I was sidelined. So I was a safe person to pick on. And when I really understood that, it's like, that makes so much sense. It's like every year there was someone that targeted me. I was like, why the hell was it every year? Like, what's wrong with me? That was the thought process, and that was internalized. And I realized, and then I awoke to the fact, like, no, I'm an easy mark. I'm very approachable. I'm very open. I have very porous boundaries, almost zero boundary awareness, growing up. Uh, and that's, and even like awakening to like, why is that, right? The reason why I had such porous boundaries was I didn't have a strong masculine figure for myself growing up. And a lot of that masculine boundary ness, or, and also my relationship with my mother, she had a very porous sense of boundaries growing up herself. And so that pattern got passed on to me, plus the absence of strong masculine figure of fighting for yourself. And, 100%, I kind of, you could say, awoke to the fact that, like, oh, that's why it worked out that way. And I don't resent my past for that. it's, it's like, I just want to understand. And through that understanding, and through awakening to the truth of that, did I heal? And that was therapeutic. That was therapy. And for example, here's a really good example that you could say I've recently like awakened to, become conscious of, people that steer me wrong or do me wrong in relationships, and this whole theme of rupture and repair. You can see my other lecture called All the Rupture, No Repair. I healed alone, you weren't aware. And I talk about that theme of rupture and repair, and about awakening and realizing that, oh, them treating me that way is completely impersonal. This is nothing about me. This is something more around human nature. And when I look around, the selfishness in the world and this and that, as soon as I started looking at more of a objective, kind of truthful lens where it's like, oh, this is human nature, then you start to forgive the world. Forgive humans for being so naturally selfish. Easier said than done when that selfishness, the consequences of selfishness are being put onto you, and you're getting the short end of the stick, or the butt end of the stick, or the sharp end. I'm not sure how that idiom goes. And yeah, and realizing like, oh, like, I actually can't make someone aware of my experience, like fundamentally, to actually communicate my experience to someone else. They actually have to be open to that. And just realizing and awakening really to realizing like the challenges in having someone to really understand your side and your perspective when they are incentivized to not understand your perspective. Have you ever heard the saying of don't talk to people that are committed to misunderstanding you? When you have a conflict, they will now have a emotional commitment to misunderstanding you, and awakening to that fact where it's like, oh, this is how structurally their mind works, and they're simply being a zombie to their mind. They're not conscious. They they don't realize that them being angry at you is creating suffering for them. When I realized me being angry at someone in general, because anger does have its place. Anger can help you mobilize yourself when you're really depressed, and it can help you do a lot of action really quickly. Anger is great for that. Anger is a beautiful emotion. Sitting with anger is something powerful. But with that being said, I also want to mention that if you're angry at someone, your sense making is wrong. Whether you were attached to something that was not true or some sort of falsehood, there was something you were attached to, some sort of expectation that was not met. And oftentimes our expectations are grounded in falsehood. Anytime you have an expectation of someone and then you say, you should have known better, you should have known blah, 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 or you should have been able to, you should have had the capacity, you should this. And it's like, how could they should have? Like, how could they have should have known? How could they have should have had the capacity? They are as they are. And to not judge that, that's an awakening in itself. Now, I do not want to also, I want to now steer towards the direction of more existential awakening. When it comes to awakening, for me, right, I'm just going to say, obviously, the awakening to it, the divine, the real deal, the actual spiritual enlightenment, the awakening, that's going to be self-evident. When you awaken to something, it's going to be self-evident in that it's circular. It's like, how do you know? Like, it's going to be truth, so true that it's prior to proof. I just want to throw that in there. So this is where it gets a little more existential and where I could probably lose you. So if I say things that are like so like off for you and do not resonate, just happily throw it away. If it doesn't serve you, what I'm about to say, throw it away. I've noticed, reeling back in on this core topic around awakening is therapy. There's so many times where you'll have a realization around something and you're like, oh my God, like there's like a grieving process. Like I remember when I had a realization of my attachment to physical matter and I cried. I was like, oh my God, I was so attached. And like when I realized I have no head, and there's nothing here. When you realize what is being pointed to with that, it's like, oh my God. Like that's a therapy session. When you realize that there are no other people. That's a therapy session. It's messed. When you realize that everything is nothingness and all of being is born out of the womb of nothingness, and it's like it's a difficult truth to face, and it's like a therapy session when you're in these realizations. When you and for some of these things I've glimpsed, and other these things have stuck with me in my direct experience in subtler ways. You can awaken to some aspect or some facet of reality, some facet of truth, some facet of God, and you can go infinitely deeper on that facet. And so each of these facets has infinite depth. You can have a total awakening, and then you can have an even more total awakening. And how is that the case? Because reality is infinite. And I just remember like so much fear around oh, like what do you mean, like what do you mean it's all imaginary? It's like, oh, what do you mean like all of my life is just or all the past that didn't happen. What do you mean there's no earth? What do you mean that, like, as soon as I look away, it literally doesn't exist? What do you mean there's no self? What do you mean there's no experiencer? Like, how the hell? Like, there's just appearances, but there's no experiencer. There's just appearances. Like, oh my God. And like, this is rough stuff to face. Just like a therapy session. It's rough truth to face. And I would say life is a therapy session. Facing yourself existentially, facing your life story, right? Really understanding the people that hurt you, more on the human day-to-day survival level. And then, really facing the truths around what this whole fundamental experience is. It's shocking. The beautiful word for this is it is a mind fuck. When you awaken to certain things, you get completely mind fucked. And it's gorgeous. It's one of the most satisfying feelings to have. It's a reward for having such deep curiosity about life, reality. And when you really reach these deep truths, they're so therapeutic. When you really connect with existential love and nothingness, and you let your ego die or dissolve, or at least, you see it from a little bit less biased perspective, you immediately have your life is invigorated with love. And I mentioned this, I wrote this down once, where awakening is simply accepting more life into yourself. Therapy is accepting more life into yourself as you become more in tune with your emotions. As you do more of your shadow work, you will do and really work with your difficult emotions. That will open you up with your emotions. I often find individuals that are really shut down emotionally have a lot of emotional work to do, and they've shut down their emotional side, that they literally become robotic and disconnected from their emotions. And as you do more therapy, you awaken to this whole new world of emotions, and it's beautiful. And you have deeper emotional experiences. You can learn, you can love yourself more, you can love life more, you can be more excited about things, you can have more laughter, as you train your emotional range. I want to put a side note, laughter yoga is very overpowered. I can now just laugh out of nowhere when I'm feeling intrinsically joyful, just like a child. A child will laugh because they're intrinsically joyful. Whereas an adult will have the learned behavior of laughing only under conditions. So then laughter becomes conditional. And then you cut yourself off from all of the neurochemical brain benefits of laughter. So, little side note there. I've noticed in shadow work, and just really in the terms of fear in general, as you face your fears in your personal life and then existentially, that is the process of awakening. Facing those fears is therapy. You know, as you have, as you choose the path of being a truth seeker, let's say, and as you choose awakening and you partake in the Kriya, you partake in the action, the study, the contemplation, the practices that will awaken your consciousness, that is therapy. That is facing the truth. That is embodying the truth. That is acclimatizing your mind and body and nervous system to the truth. That is dissolving your boundary of self with the sense of other. It is becoming non-dual. It is becoming one. It is unifying yourself with reality. It is falling in love with reality. Facing your fears is choosing to fall in love with reality more. Facing your fears is a most necessary process for awakening your mind to the truth of the things that you need for your personal life and to the truth of the most highest existential matters. I feel like I have spoken enough on this thought that I want to just practice explaining and articulating here around that truth, around awakening is a therapy session. Awakening is a therapy session. So, with that, I appreciate all of the love I receive from, comment section, people telling me what they think of these ideas that I share. I read all the comments. If you found this insightful, please share this video. I want my ideas, or I want these ideas coming through me to be shared more. Leave a like and drop me a comment on what your thoughts are here and maybe how this relates to your life. And yeah, with that, thanks for watching.